Following the stalled development of Shimon land, which was demolished by government in 2006 on account that the land had been given to an Arab investor, Prince Ali Walid, and the subsequent dish out of the Nakawa Housing Estates land to another Arab company, OPEC, on account that it was supposed to construct a housing satellite kind of facility on a cheaper price for Ugandans to rent in. All these projects have stalled and have turned out to be a den of source of insecurity to the neighboring communities. This week, the Speaker of Parliament did summon the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, who was the minister at the time when these pieces of land were being dished out to these investors. That was none other than General Kahinda Otafiire. Now I'm being joined by Honorable Paulson Lutamaguzi, a legislator in the Ugandan Parliament. Thanks for joining me.
Welcome, Mr. Sibasi.
Well, Honorable Lutamaguzi, yesterday, Honorable General Kahinda Otafiire turned down the Speaker's call for him to come and explain the reason as to why Shimon land, which formerly was holding the Shimon Primary School and later dished out, has not been developed up to date. That is the same scenario with Nakawa Housing Estate, which was demolished on account that we are going to construct there a satellite housing estate. How do you weigh yourself in this kind of defiance?
It isn't only the Naguru land, the Shimon, but even there is Chita and Tekots. These people, most of the time, they demand for land amendments. They don't demand land amendments in the interest of people, but in their interest, because they are the same people grabbing the lands. Don't be fooled that these lands are grabbed by these ordinary people. These are the people, they use proxies to go and steal that land. Of recent, you heard about Namlonge, that there is a certain investor, because they know that most of these Indians are their workers. They just bring them, then they purport to be investors when in the actual sense they aren't. So it's not surprising, and even if he could appear in the parliament, what can he say?
One would argue that Mr. Sudhir Ruparelia, the city mogul of Kampala, he has demonstrated economic will to develop these pieces of land that have been dished to him. But now we are talking about prime land that was so developmental to Ugandan community, a case of Shimon Primary School, which is just a few meters away from where we are standing, that was demolished way back in 2006, and a hotel, a 7-star hotel, was supposed to be constructed there. In fact, that 7-star hotel was supposed to be completed to be used in a Chogam of 2007. To date, the land remains vacant. The school was razed to the ground. Talk about that kind of unfair injustice and insensitivity, greed and intrigue of some individuals in government.
We've talked and tried to show the evils that are being that are being done to this country. But however much you talk, nothing much can be done. For example, you've heard of these scenarios in the markets. The ordinary people have been chased away from the markets. At the same time, they borrow billions of money on behalf of the citizens of Uganda. But after construction of such markets, then they take over such markets. So it's the same applying to land. Don't think that a person of Sudhiru's caliber is just alone. These are what I would call they are just undercover workers of some individuals in the country here. Let me ask you a question. Why do you think that almost all the time all the assets of government are sold to one individual? Every day you hear Sudhir, and at one time honorable members of parliament who call him. Because when you go to the city, actually when you looked at the list of the investors, the so-called investors, because for me I call them the so-called investors, because when you're an investor, you cannot behave the way these people are behaving. You can hardly distinguish between these so-called investors and the politicians here. Why? They are working for the politicians here. Recently, there is some bigger land that used to be owned by the government of Uganda, UCB land, UBC land. That land was bought by an individual. But when we dug deeper behind the people who had purchased that land, we discovered that there are certain politicians, again, who go under the guise of development, and then they take that land cheaply or without no pay. So when you look at Sudil, just get your microscope. He almost owns 3/4 of the city buildings. But when they pay him...
Honorable Tamaguzi, do Ugandans still need this parliament? I don't know why the Ugandan parliament, you would like to go in for a messenger. Sudil is a messenger.
My dear friend Sibasi, let me assure you from today, the type of parliament we have today, full of honorable members who have burdens in their constituencies, the type of parliament we have that is majorly compromised, the type of parliament we have which has the majority NRM members cannot do anything. They just talk, but they don't walk the talk. Any issue that comes to the floor, you can see so many people talking about it. That just a few days, they forget about it. So these calibers of Sidul, we've talked about them day and night, weeks and weeks, months and months, but nothing can be done. Why? It's a program grabbing land either under these so-called land amendments or indirectly under the proxies of politicians here. Cannot stop because it's a program of government to steal land. The majority of politicians you have today in this government, they own land. But they have to use the land amendments to ensure that they grab people, poor people's land. For example, when you go to Bulisa...
Have you lifted the veil as parliament to know
why
who are using these guys?
How?
Because
it is impossible. It is impossible. These guys are calculative and they are well positioned. When you go to the police, their children are there. When you go to the army, their children are there. When you go to the institutions of democracy, their children are there. When you go to the institutions of law, their children are there. So it's almost like a negation of the negation. We are crying, some people are crying, but we can't easily find a solution. The honorable members of parliament would have helped the state. They can't. Why? They are poor. They are all dancing under the tunes of one man who owns everything in this country. He is the law. He's the authority, he's everything. So there is no way, however much we talk, I told you, the parliament we have today cannot walk. They talk. It's just a matter of talking about a subject and then it ends like that.
What should be done? Do we need a parliament in Uganda?
The solution...
Get back the question. Yeah. Do we need the parliament in Uganda?
We would have needed it provided that it is mandated to do what it's supposed to do. But the parliament we have today is just a mediocre parliament. Because there are so many issues. Have you ever seen any, we make recommendations, but the law states that you only make recommendations, but they are not binding as a parliament. So I wanted to see the parliament taking action. For example, look at the UCB land, UBC land. We know the honorable members who have been used by politicians to grab land. It is just so many ills that are taking place, but there is no way we can fight against them provided that we don't stand as one people.
It's not a secret.
Yeah.
Are you trying to say people like Margaret Muhanga are just being used as conduits?
Muhanga is not alone. How can you get a land title and you process it in a day, actually in hours? Moreover, property of the government of Uganda. How many people have you seen lining up, getting their titles for years when they aren't get? So these Mohangas, you see, there are some people behind them. Actually, they are conduits of some big people in this government. I told you, grabbing land in this government is a program. Don't think that it just comes out of the day or night and then it starts. I told you, go to Bulisa and see what's happening. Very big people in this government, very big people in this government are grabbing peasants' land in Bulisa. They are pushing them away because they don't have rights. Well, natural justice can be there, but it has its limitations. Wow. So provided that we stand as a one parliament, a united parliament, a one-voice parliament, there is no way we can manage these people because stealing this country, grabbing lands, they cannot only stop grabbing lands. Well, even the buildings have been grabbed. It is so, unless we stand as one people, one parliament, one voice, and you walk the talk, that's when the change will come.
You cannot walk the talk in a parliament where the opposition holds the minority and the caliber of MPs that are there have no political will. In the French language, you are described as potato growers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you may not have the will and the audacity to fight the battle before you.
There are some potato growers who are relevant to the societies where they come from. I wouldn't say that all the potato growers are not important to the societies where they come from. But what matters is the quality of the individual you choose. Well, provided that the individual you chose is not compromisable, just as you see most of our honorable members, not only in NRM, but even in the opposition, they are given money. Why? They have debts. The same people who are talking a lot of words during the day, in the night you find them dancing with the big man and the rooters of our country. So provided that we stand together and define the destiny of this country, and define what this country wants, and define what our people want, especially those who voted us to parliament, there is no way we can go, because, you know, the majority members of parliament are very poor. So wherever they see that the burdens are so higher, the big man calls them, he gives them money and tells them to dance to his tunes. Well, there is no member of parliament who can act opposite of the interests of the big man.
Thanks, Honorable Paulson Lutamagoze, for joining us on this interactive news segment where we discuss issues that affect the people. Thank you very much.
Mr.